For many companies, carbon emissions reporting is one of the hot topics right now. Whether your company is directly obliged to report on carbon emissions already, or whether you will have to do so later in time, it makes a lot of sense to familiarize yourself with the topic because this might show up out of the blue. There are three so-called scopes to report on. Scope 1 is the direct emissions a company produces at its own operations. Scope 2 is the emissions that relate to the electricity a company uses. And Scope 3 is the big unknown monster for most companies that I will focus on today. Scope 1 and 2 emission reporting are relatively clear right now. It is basically the task of collecting data by analyzing energy bills, which of course is not always an easy task depending on your setup. Something which is much more difficult is to calculate a company's Scope 3 emissions. Scope 3 greenhouse gas emission calculations are about figuring out how much greenhouse gas emissions is caused by a company indirectly. When a company needs to calculate Scope 3 emissions, therefore, they are looking far beyond their own borders. They need to include a lot of data which is not easily available to them. They include the environmental impact of their whole value chain and of everything around their business. This means they think about the emissions that are created by extracting products, by producing them, by carrying them around transport, or by the products itself during their lifetime. And also the end-of-life scenario has to be included. For example, let's imagine a construction company wants to calculate their Scope 3 emissions. They would not only include their emissions during the construction time, but also the emissions for extraction of raw materials, producing materials for construction like concrete or timber beams. Then they would include the transport to the site, plus the emissions produced during the lifetime of the construction, be it a building or be it an infrastructure, plus of course the end-of-life scenario, so in that case the demolition of the building or infrastructure. Additionally, also the company needs to calculate the emission caused by, for example, commuting of its employees, by business travel, by investment choices of the company, and so on. For this you can find plenty of information on the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, which I will give you a link below in the description, of course. So why are companies doing this? First, for some of the companies it's an obligation to do so, and then they also gain a lot of insights about how their products, how the company as a whole is influencing the environment and the greenhouse gas emissions. It helps them to see the bigger picture and to reduce all the parts in their supply chain and everything around their business. Scope 3 emission calculations become more and more important, and it might be intimidating at first, but as basically most of the companies are in the same situation, the most important point is to start calculating those. You can go broad at the beginning and then detail much more in those fields that really matter for your business. For those Scope 3 emissions, there's ways of relying on generic data, which will give you a broad understanding. However, whenever you need to detail down, so for all of your big impact emission, it makes sense to detail down, you need to exchange data with other companies or along the value chain. And that is always the case where it becomes tricky. However, with more transparent and optimized data, the innovation potential and the savings potential are getting bigger and bigger. So by collaborating and sharing data, companies can work together to build a better sustainable future for all of us. I recently joined the Sina Foundation, a non-profit organization who specializes in driving this data exchange and collaboration while also enhancing data safety.
We founded the Sina Foundation with the main purpose to create the operating system for a new economy. We are building open source technology in order to enhance data collaboration between organizations that want to work on very sensitive data with each other and enrich this technology with governance mechanisms and governance frameworks that we also achieve higher data quality in those data collaboration. You can work on data without revealing actually data clear text. So you can, for example, calculate averages, do benchmarkings without revealing your sensitive inputs. And bringing those two worlds together, governance and technology, enables organizations to find complete new ways for cooperation. So usually we see digitization and sustainability going hand in hand in many processes. And one very good example are Scope 3 emissions. And in order to calculate the Scope 3 emissions, you need to have a lot of data from your suppliers. And those suppliers are usually very hesitant to share this data because you can do backward calculations about product composition, product margins, or supplier networks. So suppliers do not want to share this data. And again, we as the Sine Foundation, we are building this operating system that suppliers can do this without losing their data sovereignty.
There are also many other options where this data collaboration paired with enhanced data safety can unlock new potential.
If you, for example, take the logistic industry, if companies would share very basic data with each other, very basic logistic informations, you could save 20 to 25% of the emissions within the logistics supply chains. Scope 3 emissions requires a digitized supply chain. And if you have this, completely new ways of cooperation can emerge.
Only if you have all the relevant data available, it will be possible to optimize the processes.
The idea to found the Sine Foundation actually came during the beginning of my PhD. I'm doing a PhD in information design, which is a subfield of game theory, and there we think about the problem how to distribute information in a system that the system itself can make the best possible decisions. And during this time I met Martin, who is a cryptographer who spent his last years on very fancy encryption technologies, for example, secure multi-party computation, zero-knowledge proofs, and homomorphic encryptions, and they all have in common that you can work on data without revealing actually data in clear text. So you can, for example, calculate averages, do benchmarkings without revealing your sensitive inputs.